Welcome in Vardhan's classes. Today's topic is W.B. Yeats' most important topic in literature. William Butler Yeats. His full name is William Butler Yeats. Was one of the greatest English language poets of 20th century and received the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1923. Irish poet William Butler Yeats first published his first work in the mid-1880s while a student at Dublin Metropolitan School of Art. He eventually dropped out, but he continued to write. Yeats' early accomplishments, including The Wandering of the Oceans and other poems, 1889, and such plays as The Countess Kathleen, 1892, and Death, 1907, and in 1923 he was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature. These are the important points which are highlighted. Nobel Prize for Literature. It was given in 1923. The Countess Kathleen is written in 1892, and Dublin's Metropolitan School of Art. He was a student there. And the first work, Wandering of Ossian and other poems, that is written in 1889. These are the important points by for W.B. Yeats. Yeats wrote several more influential work after receiving his honor, including The Tower, important, 1928, Words for Musing, perhaps the other poems, 1932. Yeats died in 1939. He is remembered as one of the most significant modern poets of all time. If we talk about his early life, William Butler Yeats was born on June 13, 1865 in Dublin, Ireland. This is the important point, that is born in 13th June 1865. The oldest child of John Butler Yeats, greatest painter, and Susan Mary Pollexfen. Although John trained as a lawyer, he abandoned the law for art soon after his first son was born. इन्होंने कहा है कि जॉन वॉज ट्रेंड एज अ लॉयर, वकील के तौर पे ट्रेनिंग ली थी उन्होंने, पर उन्होंने अबंडन छोड़ दिया द लॉ फॉर आर्ट के लिए. ये स्पेंड मच ऑफ हिज अर्ली ईयर्स इन लंदन. अपने ज़्यादा टाइम वो लंदन में ही स्पेंड करते थे. Where his father was studying art but frequently returned to Ireland as well. वहाँ उनके फादर आर्ट की स्टडी करते थे but frequently returned to Ireland as well. He developed an interest in mystic religion and the supernatural. In the mid-1880s, Yeats pursued his own interest in art as a student at Metropolitan School of Art in Dublin. Following the publication of his poems in the Dublin University Review in 1885, he soon abandoned art school for other pursuits. 1885 में इन्होंने स्कूल को छोड़ दिया था. If we talk about his career, after returning to London in late 1880s, Yeats met writers Oscar Wilde, similar, Lionel Johnson, and George Bernard Shaw. He also became acquainted with Maud Gonne, a supporter of Irish independence. If we talk about W.B. Yeats, we can't forget about Maud Gonne. This revolutionary woman served as a muse for years for air. He even proposed marriage to her several times, but she turned him down. बहुत बार इन्होंने मॉडर्न को प्रपोजल किया था, पर उन्होंने उसको हमेशा ही इनकार कर दिया. He dedicated his 1892 drama The Countess Kathleen to her. The drama's name is The Countess Kathleen, that is published in 1892. Around this time, he has founded the Rhymers Club poetry group with Ernest Rice. He also joined the Order of the Golden Dawn, an organization that explores topics related to the occult and mysticism. इनके ज़्यादा लिटरेचर में जितना भी लिटरेचर आपको अकल्ट और मिस्टिसिज्म के बारे में, सुपर नेचुरलिज्म वगैरह के बारे में देखने को मिलेगा. While he was fascinated with the other worldly elements, his interest in Ireland, especially its folk tales, fueled much of his output. The title work of The Wandering of the Oceans and Other Poem 1889 draws from the story of a mythic Irish hero. Acclaimed poet and playwright, in addition to his poetry, Yeats devoted significant creative energy to writing plays. He worked with playwright Lady Gregory to develop works for the Irish stage. The two collaborating for a 1902 production of Kathleen Nee Holohan. More work soon followed, including On Bayes Strand, Deart, and At the Hawk's Well. Yeats became involved with the Celtic Revival, a movement against the cultural influences of English rule in Ireland during the Victorian period, which sought to promote the spirit of Ireland, a native heritage. Celtic Revival. If we talk about Celtic Revival, it was a moment जो मूवमेंट थी ये अगेंस्ट द कल्चरल इन्फ्लुएंसेस ऑफ इंग्लैंड रूलिंग आयरलैंड इंग्लैंड का जो रूल था आयरलैंड में उसको इसके लिए Yeats married George Hightley in 1917 and they soon had a daughter Annie and son William Michael. The celebrated writer then became a political figure in the new Irish Free State, serving as a senator for 6 years beginning in 1922. The following year, he received an important accolade for his writing as the recipient of Nobel Prize in Literature. According to the official Nobel Prize website, Yeats was selected for his always inspired poetry, which is highly artistic form, gives expression to the spirit of whole nation. Yeats continued to write until his death. जब तक उनकी डेथ नहीं हुई लिखते रहे. Some of his important later works include The Wild Swan as Cooley 1970, The Tower 1928, and The Words for Mystic perhaps and other poems 1932. Yeats passed away on January 28, 1939 in Requebec, Cap Martin, France. The publication of the last poems and two plays shortly after his death further commented his legacy as a leading poet and playwright. He had a lifelong interest in mysticism and occult. You know about the supernaturalism, we can see his interest in it, which was of putting to some readers, but he remained uninhibited in advancing his idiosyncratic philosophy and his poetry continued to grow stronger as he grew older. उनकी poetry strong होती गई जैसे जैसे वो और भी ज़्यादा older होते रहे. Appointed as Senator of the Irish Free State in 1922, he is remembered as an important cultural leader. As a major playwright, he was one of the founders of famous Abbey Theatre in Dublin. As one of the very greatest poets in any languages of the country, he subsequently applied himself to the creation of an Irish national theatre, an achievement which the help of Lady Gregory and others, was partly realized in 1899 when his play The Countess Kathleen 1892 was acted in Dublin. The English actors engaged by the Irish Literary Theatre gave plays in 1902 to an Irish amateur company which produced Yeats' Kathleen in Hollyhon in that year. The Irish National Theatre Company was thereafter created and with the help of Miss A. E. Horniman acquired the Abbey Theatre in Dublin. Yeats' early study of Irish lore and legends resulted in Fairy and Folk Tales of the Irish Peasantry 1888, The Celtic Twilight 1893 and The Secret Rose 1897. We can see his Irish nationalism in these works. In the Seven Woods, if we talk about his work in Seven Woods 1903 was followed by The Green Helmet and Other Poems 1910, Written in Discouragement 1913, Responsible I Responsibilities, Poems and a Play 1940, and The Wild Swan at Cooley 1970. The important one, The Wild Swan of Cooley. If we talk about his list of works, The Lake Eyes of Innisfree, The Wild Swan at Cooley, The Second Coming, Sailing to Byzantium, Lady and the Swan, A Prayer for My Daughter, an Irish airman foresees his death, Easter 1916, Adam's Curse, in the memory of W. B. Yeats, Adam's poem, Countess Kathleen in Hollyhon, on Ballet Strand and Deart. If we talk about the lake eyes of Innisfree, these are the important lines which are highlighted. I will arise and go to Innisfree, a small cabin built there of clay and wetness made. The important line, I will arise and go to Innisfree. And the next important line, that is nice bean rose will I have there, a hive for the honeybee. And the next line, that is important, and a small, and I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow. Their midnights are all a glimmer, and a noon a purple glow, and evening full of the linnet's wings. This poem is written by W.B. Yeats. Lake Eyes of Innisfree is a 12-line poem composed of three quatrains. Okay, three quatrains. They, you can see four lines, written by W.B. Yeats in 1888 and first published in the National Observer in 1890. Lake Eyes of Innisfree exemplifies the style of Celtic revival. It is an attempt to create a form of poetry that was Irish in origin rather than one that adhered to the standards set by English poets and critics. The Isles of Innisfree is an inhabited island with Lough Gill in Coslico, a island where he spends his summer as a child. The next important poem, that is Second Coming. Things fall apart, the center cannot be held. Most important line of this poem. Somewhere in sands of desert, a shape with lion body and head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as a sun. And the next is that 20 centuries of stony sleep were waxed a nightmare by the rocking cradle, sludges toward Bethlehem to be born. The Second Coming is a poem composed by Irish poet W.B. Yeats in 1990, first printed in the Dial in November 1920, and afterwards is included in 1921 collection of the verses Michael Roberts and the Dancers. The poem was written in 1919 in the aftermath of the First World War and the beginning of the Irish War of Independence that follows the Easter Rising. At the time when the British government was preparing to send in the Black and Tans to Ireland, and was at first entitled The Second Birth. If we talk about the summary, the speaker describes a nightmare scene, the falcon turning in a widening spiral, a gyre cannot hear the falconer, things fall apart, the center cannot hold. You can read the summary by pause this video. Okay, this is the summary. If I will read all the summary, the video become too long. And the next is the Wild Swan at Cooley. The Wild Swan at Cooley is a lyric poem by Irish poet W.B. Yeats, 1865 to 1939, written between 1960 and early 1970. The poems were first published in June 1970, issued for the Little Review, and become the title poem in the Yeats 1970 and 1990 collection The Wild Swan at Cooley. It was written during that period when Yeats was staying with his friend Lady Gregory at her home at Cooley Park, and the assembled collection was dedicated to her son Major Robert Gregory, a British airman lost during a friendly fire incident in World War I. Literary scholar Daniel Tobin writes that Yeats was melancholy and unhappy. Melancholy उदास थे, unhappy खुश नहीं थे, reflecting on his advancing age, romantic rejection by both Maud Gonne and her daughter Isolde Gonne. देखो उन्होंने दोनों को किया था प्रपोज, मॉड गोन को किया, जब वो नहीं मानी उनकी डॉटर इजोल्ड गोन को भी किया, पर दोनों ने ही उनको रिजेक्ट कर दिया. And the ongoing Irish rebellion against the British. Tobin reflects that the poem is about the poet's search for a lasting beauty in a changing world where beauty is mortal and temporary. This is the lines of the poem, and the important, you can see the important line, the trees are in their autumn beauty, the woodland paths are dry, under the October twilight the water. These are the important lines. You can pause the video and see it. This is the summary. You can read this if you want to read thoroughly. Next, Sailing to Byzantium is so important poem of W.B. Yeats. There is no country, so most important line, there is no country for old men, the young in one another's arm, birds in the tree, those dying generations. This is the important one. An aged man is but a pelted thing, a tattered cot upon a sick, unless Saul clap its hand and sing. Nor is there singing school but studying mountains of its own magnificence, and there, for I have sailed in the seas and come to the holy city of Byzantium. Important lines. You can pause the video and see. Sailing to Byzantium is a poem by W.B. Yeats, first published in 1928 collection The Tower. Tower collection में वो publish हुई थी. It comprises four stanzas is Ottawa Rima, which made up of 8 10 syllable lines. It uses a journey to Constantinople, that is Byzantium, as a metaphor for a spiritual journey. Yeats sailing to Byzantium describes the metaphorical journey of a man pursuing his own vision of eternal life. He declares that once he is out of his body, he will never again appear